Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to Neptune Knives. So today, I thought I'd go over a little bit about liner locks and this little cold steel tie light, which kind of had a lot to show me, and it definitely has impressed me more than I originally thought. Now, first, a little bit about, let's see, this little tie light was that, you know, Cold Steel, with all their videos and their kind of marketing theme and strategy, it can be a little off-putting, depending on your personality. I've heard stories in the circles that the owner is just a little bit of an odd person. But regardless, this tie light was designed by a custom knife maker, Phil. His last name is Boguszewski, lives in Washington, and he created this to be sort of like a modern, maybe more durable version of the European switchblade. It has a lot of, I guess you would say, like features that make it a strong design. Definitely not a slouch. And but one of those things is primarily the liner lock. Now, the main thing is, if you've ever watched Cold Steel's videos, which I will annotate the link, Cold Steel is known for trying to create knives that are like basically locks or unbreakable. That's their theme. You know, if they can't do that, that's kind of like what they're known for. And even though this is made in Taiwan, the quality of this is very good. Now, I've had previous Cold Steels in the past ones, like their TI models and things like that before, where the screws would be screwed in at different angles and crooked, and everything would strip, and the clip wouldn't be placed, and the groove wouldn't be perfect. It almost looked like it was a knockoff, and perhaps it was, because Cold Steel is a bigger company. There's more likelihood that there would be knockoffs available in Asia. But the thing is, that one, the lock bar, had the traditional little screw kind of keeping the lock bar pinned here so that it wouldn't overextend, or when it was locking up in terms of a liner lock. The new one, they got rid of that. Now, if you watch their video testing it, this knife, the lock bar, is tested to 80 pounds, meaning they clamped it, hung an 80-pound weight, and then it bent finally. And so that's a key thing about liner locks. I want to discuss so that you guys know what exactly liner locks limits are, and how much really is 80 pounds of force. Okay, so liner locks. A liner lock, a good one, won't deactivate. Two things can happen to a liner lock if it fails. One, it could, obviously open up again. So it could, unlock actually and do that, of course. Or it could push all the way that direction. And if there's a big gap on the side of the blade tang, it could go into the gap. It could go and basically go past the blade tang, and then the blade could open because it would be so far there that it would go into that crack, the upper crack, and then this would again still unlock on you. But a good quality one, wouldn't do that. A good quality one usually most likely will bend inward, which is why the Hinder and Strider, these knives meant for heavier duty use. I mean, how would Hinder created the lock bar stabilizer, and how would he know? Because he's been making knives for those situations. He had a chance to really use it, and he learned that without some kind of thing stabilizing this lock bar, there's a high possibility that it will bend inward, which is what happens to the tie light on their test video. After 80 pounds, this thing bent. This knife bent kind of like this, because the lock bar had bent, but it didn't disengage, thankfully. But the point is, they both these knives. Now, not the Fox Deimos, which is something that Fox, I think they don't have as much knowledge of how to make knives, but definitely on the Spyderco liner locks. There's a feature, and there's also some common things about liner locks. First of all, if you notice, no matter which knife it is, whether it be this 4 1/4 inch blade to the 3.75 inch Lum, to the Cold Steel, you see those stainless steel liners are practically almost identical, I think, barely different in thickness. What Spyderco tends to do to try to help the lock bar not slide all the way in is kind of create this little overextending part. You see how that kind of comes out beyond the blade tang? Does it here too? Because then that, if it starts to push in, then it'll dig into the stainless steel, hopefully, and rather than the lock bar get pushed down, it can't, because there's all this extra surface area. Unlike the Deimos, when done in the really hard testing, if you saw, which means when I was holding it this way and hitting the tree with the back of the blade spine, it was definitely more than 80 pounds of force. You can see how it bent in. You can't stop that, nevertheless. I mean, it's going to happen, and so there is a point where liner locks can fail, and that's what I want to go over, you know, in your consideration for using them. Okay, but regardless, there's these three now. There's three different liner locks. The Valentine, but the thickest lock bar. Now, you can see, okay, on the Lum and the cold steel, you see, the lock bar is short. Now, what that is, okay, again, if you ask custom knife makers, the reason why the lock bar is short or longer is because that just affects the spring tension, like how hard it is to disengage the lock. You know, you got a longer lock bar, it's easier to push down the pier, of course, because the leverage, because a longer lever. Now, thing is, you know, a longer lock bar is, you know, more chance of it bending. Now, they probably did this lock bar longer because it is a thick lock bar, and this is by a Butch Valentine. And then here, these two, you see, pretty much the same. So it's kind of like a universal, same thickness liner, same length lock bar. See? Now that's what's going to happen if your knife receives the back of the blade tang, gets a lot of negative force. Let me see the blade tang right here. You know, if you have your knife and you know, you're doing something that, you know, pushes on the lock for sure, like that, you know, it can definitely push this bar down inward, and it can bend it, you know. And you can see, perhaps even here, you can see how the wearing is, you know, on the Valentine's. It's created a little notch. Now, that's fine. I mean, it's stainless steel. Now, the blade is S30V, so you got, probably, the S30V is definitely stronger than this stainless steel liner, so this is going to wear first, so that kind of sucks. But generally speaking, it depends on that matchup. Now, VG10 combined with the stainless steel, that should be about equal, and this one's wearing quite well. Now where I'm getting to is that, okay, why cold steel lock bar is better. Now, first of all, I can only hypothesize why it's better, why it's done this way, and that Spyderco doesn't do it. But do you see that little groove? Like a blood groove. And you see on the other side, oh, you see, on the other side of the lock bar, you see, it's not flat. So it's a circular shape. They've molded it into that extra little curved section right there that kind of protrudes. And if you guys don't know, a circular shape, like the Volkswagen Beetle, why is it like one of the safest cars? Your insurance goes down by, like, I don't know, 30% or something. It's like the most rigid structure because of that circular shape. The Volkswagen Beetle, a bug. And regardless, that's true. So a circular shape can absorb more force. So in terms of, if this lock were to bend, ultimately this entire lock bar were to bend, you know, there's that extra, you know, I mean, rigidity right here. And why Spyderco doesn't do that, you know, I'm assuming just because this one is a knife that they keep backing, and that is one of the things that they felt was necessary to I say, manufacturer pay for to manufacture, because of their, you know, they got that reputation for strong locks. And you see, this isn't on any of the other ones. You know, these are just normal flat bars. Now, here's the thing. So, if this liner lock, now most liner locks will never have like a stabilizer bar. It'll always be like this shape. If this liner lock only handled 80 pounds of force with the same thickness as this Spyderco, how much can the Spyderco handle? You see? So that's where you have to look at now. What exactly is safe to do with a liner lock? Now, 80 pounds of force is not as much as you think. Hold on. So we're going to get into a little bit of physics here, okay? I got a childhood friend. He's an engineer, but regardless, I learned this in high school. Okay, so power equals force times distance over time. And this is something I learned from my martial arts and stuff, okay? Now, the power, P, I mean, ultimately how much, you know, force, ultimately how much I guess you would be considering, is equal to the force you're applying times the distance divided by the time. So, for example, let's say this way. Let's say you swing at somebody with your arm, okay? And let's say you do your push-ups, and you guesstimate that you can. Let's say, for example, well, let's say you could, you know, swing the knife, or okay, let's see. Okay, correction. Let's say you're batoning. This is a better example, okay? And you're batoning it and you're whacking it, and you think that your force you're applying is only 20 pounds of force, okay? Or let's say, yeah, you're stabbing somebody and they move their body, which is like 100 something, you know, 180 pounds, 200 pounds, 150 pounds. They're moving that direction, and you're stabbing this direction, and they're going that way, okay? And we're talking negative force applied. But let's just say it was 20 pounds, okay, for this first time. The force would be 20, right? Okay. Now, let's say, for example, you were to swing that stick that you're batoning with a good, you know, from the blade to your hand, you swing it and down, you're talking like 2 feet. Let's just go, for example, 2 feet. I mean, you stab and it's a 2 feet distance that you moved your arm, right? Okay, 2 feet. Now, how fast did you do it? Let's say you did it within a second. Okay? Right there, you got 20 pounds of force times 2 feet divided by 1, you have 40 pounds of force. 20 pounds of force becomes 40 pounds of force at 2 feet in 1 second. 2 feet per second. You know, miles per hour thing here. Okay? So, let's say it was a half a second though. If you were to slash really fast, you're talking like within half a second, right there, you'd be up to 80 pounds of force. So, now the thing is, will there be necessarily 80 pounds of force resisting this blade in terms of negative force? I don't want to scare anyone and be like, oh my god, you can't ever stab with it or fight. You know, it's just dangerous to use liner locks. I have my video of the of the Lum Tonto, me batoning it. It's fine. The thing is, you have to consider that though. Yeah, I mean, you know, well, the sharper the blade is, the more easier it's going to go in, the less resistance you're going to have. It depends what you're stabbing into. Something you're stabbing into would have to be solid and not be able to absorb any of that force. So if, for example, it was self-defense, the other person's soft, that absorbs that cushions that force, absorbs it, and it disperses it. So it's not going to be like, you know, 80 pounds straight on to the lock. But regardless, it won't disengage. Hopefully, if it's built right, it'll just bend inward. Now, once it bends inward, trying to bend it back, you know, a little hard. And you can see some of these titanium frame locks, you know, like this military. You can see they create this large section right here to hopefully kind of prevent that from going inward, or they'll cut it as narrow, you know, of a notch, like, you know, maybe not, you know, this one, for example, is such a wide gap. This one is, you know, these are about the equal. I mean, ultimately, you know, basically, liner locks, you know, for me, like, I like this Lum Tonto. It's going to be one of my favorites in my upcoming favorite video. And after, I had to think about it a lot, you know, just because of its price point, what it is, and what it can and cannot do. Consider that this is basically a lesson on liner locks. What you expect the durability of it, you know. If you've been following along, you'll have a good idea about the materials used, between also how the stop pins, whether they're shouldered or not, like they are on this cold steel and this Lum Tonto, you know how it's constructed. You know, you have to look at the liner lock, its limits. For me, a liner lock then is to me like a light to medium use knife. Meaning if I was stuck surviving with this outdoors, it can be done because I have that video showing it. It'll do it. You know, but smaller jobs, smaller tasks, you want to start getting really, you know, I say like tough or hardcore with it, you know, they're starting to get dangerous. And I would, you know, definitely don't do it. I mean, understand that 80-pound force, how much is that? I mean, a person, you know, if you were to fall and have your knife, or if you were to just move improperly, you know, how heavy are you? That force, if you're holding it tight, how much force is applied on that? You know, there's a limit to liner locks, and that's that limit. And you know, like I said, I hope these videos help you understand more in depth what your knife can and cannot do, what it's all about, basically. You know, these videos are here to get you to understand what you're really holding in your hand, and you know, basically, you know, help you understand what you know, kind of get a closer connection to the knife. If you understand what I'm saying, being metaphorical or something, you know, whatever. But regardless, that's a liner lock for you.